Hi, I'm Lady Charmaine, and my guest today is known as a hip-hop lyricist who has the ability to outrhyme his opponent at any time. His philosophical intelligence brought him notoriety in the 1980s and 1990s, and he's here today to talk about his TV One Unsung episode, The Story of Kool Moe Dee, airing Monday, July 16th on TV One. Help me welcome Mohandas Deweese, better known as Kool Moe Dee, to the show. Hey, Mo, how you doing?
I'm cool. That sounded real spectacular.
Well, of course. I'm like, brother, you got history, legends, you know.
Thank you.
Now, your show is going to be airing on Monday. Were you surprised when TV One called you and wanted to do a story on you for Unsung?
I was more apprehensive than I was surprised.
Why do everybody say that? Now, why were you apprehensive?
Well, ironically, based on what turned out, is like, I knew what I knew when I first did it. It's one of my favorite shows, honestly. Mm-hmm. But just in people that you talk to, there's a side of us that understands as entertainers and artists, you know, there's this aspect of the business that always wants to sensationalize things to make it more dramatic. And it's just like, you know, there's some inaccuracies in there, kind of like I call it dramatic license. You know, how you say things and what you say, and then he lost everything. Well, like that didn't happen, but what is that for? But I get it, so, you know, try not to take it but so personal. The other thing is, you know, when you're dealing with production, especially when you're dealing with a corporate entity, you know, I said the infrastructure of capitalism sets it up so that the artist is almost always inherently at odds with either the label or the radio station or the network, just because, you know, the way the business is set up, you're feeding a beast and they play to the lowest common denominator, so you don't really get a sense of the artist. And the thing that puts the artist in a position is like, imagine being on stage with a microphone for years and never ever really being heard. That's kind of the position that it feels like. So you don't really get a sense of who I am. You don't really know too many things. It's like they're telling the story they want to tell based on what they think will sell or what will titillate. So with all of the layers of things, like it's not even a mention of me graduating from college and how important I think that is in terms of for the next generation to see that in hip-hop, and that you can go to school, you can get a degree, and you can have a very prominent and flourishing career in hip-hop or music in general. But I guess if the powers that be doesn't deem that interesting or important, then they'll just talk about the battle with LL. Like, that's more important. Like, how did that become more important than that? So it's kind of that apprehension, because I kind of knew what it was. And like I said, it's one of my favorite shows, so I know the arc. And he started here, and this was good, and his family did this, and they went through that, and then it all went wrong. Like, oh, God. So, and I knew, for me, I don't smoke, don't drink, don't get high. I never did any drugs. I don't have those dramatic arcs in my stuff. So I'm like, they're going to have to create the drama. So what can they do? They're going to have to either do something with LL, or they're going to have to do something with the taxes, and he lost everything. I'm like, I actually didn't, but okay, if you want to say that. So that was what the apprehension was about.
And it's funny because with you speaking of college, you are really known as, people think of you as the hip-hop intellect or the first hip-hop intellectual, because you have such a vast vocabulary. Where did your love for knowledge and vocabulary come from?
Just being an analytical child. The gift, I guess some of this I have to say, accredited to my father. He was the small-time hustler who also read the dictionary. I think that's in the unsung. But really, I could see paradoxes, and I saw parallels and paradoxes all through the neighborhood. I saw it being in the middle of Harlem. I got a chance to see the Chinese laundry owned by the Chinese, the Jewish landlord owning our building, the laundromat owned by some of the Latino stuff besides the Chinese laundry. You had the grocery stores that were owned by the Koreans and, you know, sometimes the Puerto Ricans, whatever. And I'm like, all of this stuff in our neighborhood, and we own none of it. Interesting. You know, looking at stuff like that at a very, very young age. Seeing parents come up in a welfare system, and I'm talking multiple parents in the neighborhood, selling food stamps so that they could make sure they could buy cigarettes or alcohol, which stamps didn't cover. So seeing those kind of parallels and those kind of paradoxes throughout the neighborhood, and then the whole, the drug dealer's our role model, it didn't really affect me the same way. Like, for me, I saw a real clear connection to the junkie nodding on the corner and the drug dealer driving the car. I'm like, don't get to drive that car if you don't turn him into a junkie. So it's not your responsibility, yet you are absolutely impacting his life. And the thing that's so crazy about the drug thing, seeing that very early on, that's kind of what started the analysis in me. I'm like, how are these guys viewed as heroes when it's their product that's messing the hood up? And then go into the crack or the drug dealer or the people that are using, you start fighting and robbing and stealing from your own community, all based on this product, and the guy that's selling it is a hero. How is that cool? So I just was always able to see connections in ways that I think a lot of children weren't looking at. And from that standpoint, it just made me analyze. And that's why my stance on no drugs and no drinking and no alcohol, I'm like, even if there's a weakness in you, even if you look at it as socially drinking or having a good time, for me, it just felt like that was something somebody is selling us in order to make money. You don't need any of that to actually have a good time. So I used to say, if I want to be high, I'm high. And I even have on a rhyme on my Get the Picture rhymes, like when I want to get high, I smoke the mic. Like I'm not going to get on anything that's going to make me codependent, and that's going to be connected to my livelihood or my fun. You got to be kidding. On top of that, the junkie and the drug addict, I'm like, that's the end result. That's not the starting point. It probably started out back at a school where one of your friends comes up and say, hey, take a puff of this. And for me, you could never do that. Like that was fighting words to me.
Wow, you better preach, as they say. You just broke all that down, because your mentality is totally different from the young rappers that we have today who do promote the smoking, who do promote the drinking, but your mentality is so different. And you just gave, a whole different analogy. And hopefully people who are listening to this and who will be listening to this will listen and realize what you just said. They're not going to make any money off of me. They're driving the cars and you're the person that's addicted to the drug, but they're driving. And that's a great way to look at that. But my next question for you worked with Quincy Jones on Back on the Block. What was it like working with the great Quincy Jones?
He has actually, in my Unsung episode, I got to thank him personally for coming in and doing that. That was the pinnacle experience of my music career, without question. The highest level of professionalism. It's like sitting with the musical version of Yoda, the mastery, the wisdom coming off of him. I mean, just in conversation, if you just sit and listen, and even in telling stories and telling funny stories and telling us some of the dirty stories, and just the life that he lived and all of those greats and those people, his lives that he's touched and influenced and who he's come up under, and how he saw the connectivity between jazz, bebop, and hip hop, and he understood it in ways that a lot of people didn't understand. And to really be able to break down that the jazz guys that we look at and have in such high esteem were also very, very personally hindered by drugs and certain things like that, which is, again, it still reinforced everything that I was saying. When you see some of these stories, those stories didn't get told about those guys. We all knew the music, so we knew about Miles Davis and Charlie Mingus, and he'll just run those names off and story after story after story. But when you see a through line from Billie Holiday all the way through, it's like, wow, drugs took a lot of our great people out. So it's been something that, like I said, working with him, he almost button-hooked my whole philosophical side of the career, because he reinforced everything that I thought and everything that I felt. And he'll take an occasional drink, but he's damn sure not doing any drugs. And we had that conversation also. So really just breaking that down and having those conversations and working with him, that was more than the music. Actually having him kind of just tell me stories and give me insight and showing the connectivity. And the thing about the Back on the Block project, that pound for pound makes it, it speaks to my soul on a certain level. He's the only producer that I've known that has done a project at that level that was cross-generational, where you have the elders, the hot people of the day, and some up-and-comers like the Tevin Campbells of the world. It's like if you do from the past, the future, the future, and the present, and you merge it together, that's really where our true power is. The racism, sexism, classism, and ageism, which is the fourth one. The ageism is another way that we divide ourselves and disempower ourselves. If you have a situation where you can have a Quincy Jones, a Kool Moe Dee, and a Lil Wayne in a building, you have every generation, and it's the highest level of power, because it brings the older people into listening to the younger people. It brings the younger people into mentoring or being mentored by the older people, and it brings the people that are hot and quote-unquote of the time being able to show the validity in our history as well as just being current.
Well, if you are just tuning in, we are talking to the philosophical, intellectual Kool Moe Dee. He just broke it down. Now, people need to get a pen and pad. We're going to give you a minute to go get one to write down what this brother is saying. Now, Kool Moe Dee, you also had a TV show. Many people don't even know you had a TV show offer with ABC. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was years back, which, one of my crash courses. My thing is always I love the art and the craft, and I've always hated the business and the industry. And that doesn't mean the people personally, because I understand people have a job to do. But the machine, the mechanics, the machinery of the industry, it's just so one note, lowest common denominator, very little limited freedom, if any at all, fitting and trying to appease affiliates and making sure, I see old stories about Bill Cosby's I Spy and network affiliates in certain regions in the South and Florida and Alabama wouldn't play it, wouldn't show the show because of the racism. So although we're not in that time, we have very, very similar archetypes that we have to jump through. So I say all of that as the backdrop to when I got offered the TV show, the talk show, it literally, the guy in the office in the pitch meeting literally said, "Oh my God, you speak so well for a," and he couldn't finish the sentence because there was no way to finish that sentence without being something insulting. And I let him off the hook by saying an old school rapper that doesn't, and everybody started laughing before I even finished my sentence because they knew how tense it was, and they saw me being able to handle where he was getting ready to go in a comedic way. It's like, we love this guy. Oh, we got to give him a TV show. And I pitched basically Oprah Winfrey meets Bill Maher is what I was pitching way back then when Politically Incorrect was still on ABC. And I said, what you need to do, what we need to do, and I'm talking about our generation, our culture, I said, we're looking for information and we're looking for answers. We keep getting fed low-level entertainment. It's a way to be entertaining but informative at the same time. What radio used to do back in the days, it used to be very, very community-based and community-oriented, so you knew what was happening in your community if you listened to your quote-unquote local radio station. Well, once the corporate side comes in, then the local side takes a back seat, and you now have this corporate kind of, we're going to play Lil Wayne 40 times, and we're going to play Jay-Z 100 times, and we're going to play this record 20 more times, and we're going to just sell advertising and, maybe some products or whatever, but you're not really going to have a sense of community. I was saying we can do that on television by taking the format that Oprah does, which is information, and Bill Maher does with the politically incorrect stuff, and basically infuse entertainment through that, and let's not do the come out and do the silly dialogue, monologue, tell a joke, bring an artist on or bring an actress or an actor on and talk about their new movie and, just like keeping it so light. I'm like, why can't we just have depth in late night where it doesn't have to be so heavy-handed, but it can be at least informative? And they were like, okay, great. But they were just saying okay, great because they were a little enthralled and captivated by my wisdom and my wow in the room. However, when I got to the set, they were like, okay, do the monologue. Here's the jokes about, what are you talking about? And basically, they just wanted me to fill the slot that Arsenio left. And that's no slight to Arsenio because I loved Arsenio's show. But I said I didn't want to do an Arsenio show because I'm not a comedian, not because I had anything against Arsenio or what he was doing. I thought it was a great show. I said, but I'm not a comedian. I'd rather be taken seriously with the ability to make you laugh as opposed to be taken as a comedian with the ability to get seriously. And I said, just the opposite side of the coin. And it can work. If I'm going to do something that makes me comfortable, coming out and telling jokes isn't it. Especially jokes that are written for a light, late-night, mainstream kind of, it's not really funny, chuckle version of funny. So it fell apart because I kind of stood my ground on not going out that way. And they were like, well, we lied to you. And I said, you didn't tell me. I asked you, did I have to do this? And you said no. And they said, literally, well, we lied to you. And if you want this bad enough, you're going to have to jump through hoops. And I was like, wow, okay. I guess I'm not having a TV show. So the money that was on the table was so great, but, unfortunately, I have a sincere thing about my integrity in terms of what I'm trying to project, and my position is I want to raise and elevate consciousness through entertainment. That's just what it is in a nutshell.
Right.
And anything that's not going to do that, I don't know how to do frivolous. And that's not to say I can't just, take it very light and do ear candy every now and then, because it's cool. But even on my lightest records, like the Go See the Doctor, it's still a safe sex message in there. So I just can't just be light and frivolous. I could do some narcissism. I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I'm the baddest. I could do some of that. But even that becomes one note and boring at a certain point. It's like I have to say something. There's no way to be in this position, have this level of platform, this level of insight that I think I acquired through the years, and then not give it back to generations and people that are absolutely starving for information.
That was really good. And you just said a mouthful. You just stuck to really who you were. You didn't allow them to turn you into who they felt you should be. You stayed true to who you were. Although money was on the table, you still had to stay true to who Kool Moe Dee was.
Oh, yeah. A couple of $1 million, but okay. All right. And I really needed the money at that time, too.
Okay, look, I know that's right. Who don't? I need that now. I need that now. But I want to thank you so much. I know you have another interview. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure talking with you. And many people don't know that we used to talk over 20 years ago. And like I had to remind Kool, he caught me for my 21st birthday 20 years ago. You're still a gentleman. You were always such a great person then, and you still are today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You are so. Don't forget to watch TV One Unsung Monday, July the 16th, the story of Kool Moe Dee on TV One. Thanks so much, Kool.
Thank you.